You can say mental health matters all day long and twice on Sunday. But if the workloads remain impossible, nobody's going to believe that message. Most leaders believe that they're creating safety in their organizations. They check in, they say the right words, they offer flexibility, they tell people, take care of yourself. But despite all of that, their teams can feel tense and guarded and like they're being careful. This is the uncomfortable truth about trauma-informed leadership. You can have good intentions and still create a threat because people don't respond to your intent. They respond to the cues of safety, unpredictability, power, exposure. Most leaders have never been trained to see those cues. Walk you through 7 shifts that completely change how trauma-informed leadership works in practice. Not theory, not slogans, not empathy training alone. Practical shifts you can audit this week. So let's get straight into it. Because the first mistake most leaders make is invisible. Shift number 1, stop assuming you would see a threat response if it were happening. So many people, including leaders, think stress is obvious. We expect to see visible anxiety or tears or anger or withdrawal. But that isn't how our nervous systems usually behave when we're at work. Stress can look like compliance, nodding yes, shaking their head no in meetings. It looks like responding to emails. It looks like no problem. But internally, someone's brain is running this constant background scan. Am I safe here? Can I trust this person? What happens if I mess up? How exposed am I right now? And that internal scanning consumes cognitive bandwidth. It makes it harder to focus, harder to be creative, and people are much less willing to take risks. It's so much scarier. And because it's invisible, leaders often assume everything is fine. So this is the first reframe. Instead of assuming safety, unless you see distress, assume that some percentage of your team is operating right now with this elevated vigilance, even your high performers, even the people who look the calmest. This realization alone will change how you design meetings, how you deliver feedbacks, how you make your decisions. Because once you understand that unseen stress is probably present, you're not going to interpret behavior as just someone's attitude. You're going to start looking at the conditions. Shift number 2, treat predictability as a performance lever. Most leadership advice will tell you to be more empathetic, to listen better, to validate people's feelings. And that does matter. Absolutely, you need to be doing that. But if you're also not being predictable, you're not going to help someone reliably regulate their stress nervous system. Uncertainty is so powerful for someone who is looking for threats. It is going to activate that threat. If I don't know when a decision is going to be made or how you're going to be delivering feedback, or if I don't know what the rules are, my brain is going to fill in those blanks, and usually with the worst case scenarios. If a leader says something like, we'll figure it out, or just take the time you need, people say that meaning to be supportive. But for someone who's already carrying stress or whose nervous system is activated, that ambiguity feels destabilizing. Predictability can lower a cognitive load. Clear timelines can lower anxiety. Transparent decision rules can reduce the cycle of rumors of people making up in their mind what they think you're doing and sharing that with coworkers. The audit. Do your people know when you're going to finalize your decisions? Do they know what inputs you pay attention to, the ones that matter? Do they know how you evaluate performance? If not, you're asking their nervous systems to stay on high alert. Compassionate tone is not a substitute for a clear process. Often, the process itself is the compassion. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out my video. If you want to learn more about building a trauma-informed workplace or how survivors show up in the world and how you can support them, check out my newsletter down below. Sign up. And while you're down there, I'd love it if you click the thumbs up button to show how much you appreciated this video. Thanks so much. Shift number 3, reframe people problems as power and process problems. When someone disengages or burns out or becomes reactive, leaders often start with character. Oh, that person's not resilient, or they're not committed to this company or this role, Oh, they're too sensitive. Trauma-informed leadership asks a different question first. What in the system is amplifying stress right now? Is our authority unpredictable? Are we shifting expectations without warning? Are we distributing information unevenly? Are decisions happening behind closed doors? Is accountability happening in public and shaming? When authority and when leaders seem arbitrary, people protect ourselves, right? When processes are opaque, we withdraw or we overperform thinking that's the way to be safe. When power is exercised without explanation, that erodes trust. Often, once you fix the structure, someone's behavior is going to improve without having to give some sort of motivational speech. Now, this isn't about removing responsibility. It's about looking at the environment people are operating in and where you're expecting people to be responsible. Okay, shift number 4. Make small procedural changes where people feel most exposed. You don't need a massive overhaul to increase safety. You need precision. Stress responses are highly sensitive to context. Tiny cues can show someone whether they need to feel safe or whether they might feel threatened. For example, instead of saying, "Let me know if you need anything," which places the burden on someone who may not even know what they need, try offering structured options. Say something like, "I notice you've been carrying a lot. Would it help to push this deadline by a week? Or would it help to reassign part of this project? Would it help you to take a couple days off and regroup?" Those specific offers reduce cognitive load at a time when it may be very difficult for someone to be thinking about those things. And they communicate that you are attuned to that person's need. And you make it easier for them to say yes or no. Another example, if someone takes time off after a difficult life event, don't leave the return undefined. That undefined time frame, yes, you can take your time off, and not talking about it can create real pressure. Set a compassionate structure instead. Yes, you can have the time off, and let's reconnect in 2 weeks to check in. And we'll talk about how you're feeling and what a return plan could look like. Boundaries are not the opposite of compassion. They're often what actually makes compassion real. So ask yourself, where do people in your organization feel most uncertain? Is it performance reviews, crisis response, time off requests? Leverage lives. Shift number 5. Move away from training to system design. Many organizations send leaders to trauma-informed workshops. They learn the language, they learn the terminology, they learn to say the right things at the right time. But if the policies and incentives are the same, nothing meaningful is going to change. You can say mental health matters all day long and twice on Sunday, but if the workloads remain impossible, nobody's going to believe that message. You can advertise unlimited part-time off, but if people who take it are penalized for it, then they're not going to trust you anymore. Embedding practice means the system itself reflects the values. It means access to support does not require over-disclosure. It means performance management reduces unnecessary public exposure for people. And it means that you're setting realistic expectations. And it means that as a leader, you are accountable for how power is being used. That training is important. It raises awareness, but the system and your processes determine the lived experience. So if you're serious about trauma-informed leadership, audit your policy, not just the language. Shift number 6. Be honest about the risk of compassionate language. This one can feel really uncomfortable. Trauma-informed language can humanize power, but it can also feel like it's softening control, especially if you don't change the conditions. So if you say your well-being is important while you're increasing demands on someone, that's a mismatch. If you invite someone to be vulnerable, but there's no protection if they speak up, that's a mismatch. If you frame your directives as a choice, but it's actually not really optional, that's staged autonomy. And people feel that incongruence. And when a leader sounds supportive while a system feels unsafe, Employees often internalize the blame. I assume the discomfort must be my fault. That's how gaslighting dynamics unintentionally emerge. If you use compassionate language, check whether conditions actually changed. Did the workload shift? Did the policy change? Did you update the timeline? Did you address accountability issues? If nothing structural changed, reconsider the message. Safety is built through congruence. It's built through following through on your word. What you say has to match what you enforce. Shift number 7, anchor safety in fair process and repair, not in lowering standards. One of the biggest fears leaders express is that if I focus on safety, maybe our standards are going to drop or people aren't going to feel they need to be accountable. But accountability needs to be predictable and not humiliating. People can meet high standards when they understand the criteria, when they know how decisions are made, and when feedback is delivered privately and respectfully. When you address mistakes with clarity rather than simply exposing someone to the public, holding people accountable arbitrarily feels like a threat. Transparent accountability, that is structure. And structure is stabilizing. Safety doesn't mean removing consequences. It means removing unnecessary shame. It means explaining decisions and being visible and willing to repair if and when harm does occur. That repair is critical. No leader can avoid every possible misstep. But when you acknowledge impact, explain your intent, and adjust your behavior, people will learn to trust you. If you create harm and are silent, that erodes trust. So if you change nothing else this week, audit your communication through a different lens. Not, was I nice? Ask instead, was this a surprise? Did this create a loss of control? Did this expose somebody publicly? And if the answer is yes, probably need to redesign it. Look at your meeting agendas. Are they sent in advance? Look at your feedback process. Is it consistent? Look at your decision making. Do you explain it? Does your team understand how you are making decisions? Look at your policies. Do they require someone to be vulnerable in order to get support? Every one of these moments sends you cues, and cues accumulate into culture. Culture is not what you say. Culture is not what you say you value. It's what people's nervous systems learn to expect. When expectations are stable, transparent, and fair, people will perform, and they're going to do better. When expectations are ambiguous or arbitrary, people become vigilant. And that vigilance is expensive. It costs creativity. It costs collaboration on your teams. It costs retention of employees. Trauma-informed leadership is not about turning you or your managers into a therapist. It's about understanding how power interacts with stress, recognizing that authority is always sending some sort of signal. And it's about designing those signals intentionally. Because whether you realize it or not, your team is constantly asking one question. Is it safe for me to fully show up here? Your process answers that question long before your words do. Now, in the next conversation, we need to go deeper because expanding systems is one thing. But what do you actually say in the moment when someone is struggling? How do you offer support without prying? How do you create space for someone to share without becoming that therapist? How do you maintain standards while adjusting the conditions? This is where the work becomes personal. And that is where many leaders hesitate. So if this challenged you, good. Leadership isn't just strategy. It's physiology, it's psychology, it's power. And when you understand those invisible mechanics, you stop guessing. You start designing. And that is when safety stops being a slogan and starts becoming real.